A reading from Psalm 1. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.
Have you ever heard of mycorrhiza? I recently read a New York Times article that even further developed my love for the trees and for creation. Mycorrhizas are thread-like fungi that envelop and fuse with tree roots, helping them extract water and nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen in exchange for some of the carbon-rich sugars the trees make through photosynthesis. Research has demonstrated that mycorrhizas also connect plants to one another, and that these associations might be especially ecologically important. The trees, the plants, fungi, and microbes in forests are so thoroughly connected, some scientists describe them as superorganisms. Now, enter Suzanne Simard, who has totally changed this science. Suzanne considered becoming a writer before she discovered forestry, and her love of nature and trees and her childhood exploring forests solidified this calling. Now, there is some controversy in the forestry field around this science, very scandalous. Some of them think it's too far to say that the trees communicate with each other. And normally, Simard, as a scientist, is careful to use conservative language, but when addressing the public, she embraces metaphor and reverie in a way that makes these scientists uncomfortable. In a TED Talk she gave in 2016 that has millions and millions of views, she describes a world of infinite biological pathways, species that are interdependent like yin and yang, and veteran trees that send messages of wisdom on to the next generation of seedlings. She calls the oldest, largest, and most interconnected trees the mother trees, a phrase meant to evoke their capacity to nurture those around them, even when they aren't literally their parents. In her book, Finding the Mother Tree, she compares mycorrhizal networks to the human brain. I could go on, and part of that is probably because it's speaking to my child self that was obsessed with the Chronicles of Narnia and how the trees were able to communicate in those books. But anyways, before I digress, it's safe to say that this is a totally new way of seeing creation. So, when we approach this psalm, Psalm 1, about trees planted by streams of water, I can't help but think about some actual trees. I've always been drawn to this psalm for the imagery of it. And now the science of mycorrhizas makes me even more in awe of it. After all, this is the first psalm of 150 psalms we get in the book. Commentaries say that this was chosen for a reason as the first one, to set the tone for all of the others, to set the example of what it looks like to live faithfully. So I love the imagery part of it, but then we also get all of this talk about the law. the law of God. And when I hear this word, I will be honest that I flinch a little bit because I think about the years that I've spent trying to live by all of the rules, trying my hardest to be perfect by the law. I thought that all that mattered was being right, was following those rules to a T. And that's the law I thought I needed to follow. But now, I can see it's so much more expansive than that. When I read Psalm 1 with now, my shoulders relax. Because now I see that all of the law and all of the commandments hang on one thing: love. As we prepare for the season of Advent coming so soon, I think of that lyric in O Holy Night that gets me every time. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. This is what it means to be that well-planted tree by the stream. To love. In her book, Psalms for Praying, Nancy Merrill puts it like this: Blessed are those who walk hand in hand with goodness, who stand beside virtue, who sit in the seat of truth. For their delight is in the spirit of love, and in love's heart they dwell day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water that yield fruit in due season, and their leaves flourish, and in all that they do, they give life. The unloving are not so. They are like dandelions which the wind blows away. Turning from the heart of love, they will know suffering and pain. They will be isolated from wisdom, for love knows the way of truth. The way of ignorance will perish as love's penetrating light breaks through hearts filled with illusions. Forgiveness is the way. The thing about trees is that even those that are perfectly well-watered, those that remain by the stream in good health, for many types of them, they go through seasons too. They bloom and thrive in spring. They survive the summer. They give up their leaves and let them fall in autumn. They appear to be dead even in the winter. And yet, spring comes again, and they bloom again. There are many, many lessons to be learned from the trees, and this is one that I will be learning over and over again the rest of my life. We are not meant to be green and blooming all year round, all of our lives. There are seasons of our lives when we must rest. Maybe a season of grief. The trees, the flowers, so much of creation follows the pattern of life, of death, of resurrection. And so we learn how to practice those little deaths too. We might not can always count on spring coming 3 months later like the trees can, but we can count on resurrection always. There is a cycle at play in all of this. In the great story of creation, there is life, death, and resurrection. And that is so much of what we've discussed over these past 10 weeks of our Wednesday night study called Toward Wholeness. The practices we've discussed, as varied as they have been, have all had some things in common. They have called us to slow down. They have called us to be present, to stay open. They have reminded us that productivity and efficiency are not meant to be our life's purpose. We have been reminded instead that we are meant to be a whole person. Mind, body, and spirit, all connected. We are meant to be whole as an individual human being within ourselves, and we are also meant to be whole by relying on our community around us. We are all connected too. We could learn something from the trees, how to be our best selves, our best community, only taking that which we need, knowing when to rest and when to bloom, caring for the young, whether they are our kin or not, because we are all inextricably connected. Jesus' invitation, as we heard in Matthew, to come and rest still applies today. Sabbath still means something to us today. We are not meant to work until we are desperate for rest. No, our rest can fuel our work instead. May we resist the tyranny of busyness to instead live into this unhurried wholeness. May we take our time growing, and through it all, may we stay connected to our source of love, the great mother tree who sustains us all. Amen.